Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to look at something a little bit different, and I'm very curious to see how this turns out. So for the very first time we are going to go to Bulgaria, and prior to this video I'd never seen nor tasted a craft beer from Bulgaria, and this one is one that I kind of randomly came across in De Bierwinkel in Leiden in the Netherlands, and when I saw it was from Bulgaria I was like, I have to have one of these. So yeah, for this review then we are going to go to Burgas, which is on the east coast of Bulgaria in the southern part, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Beer Bastards. So this one is called Trust Me You Can Dance. It comes in at 5.5% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy style IPA. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. This was the very first time that I'd seen a beer from Bulgaria. There was 2 or 3 different ones there, but this is the one that really just kind of caught my eye because I liked the hop bill in this one. So yeah, should be an interesting beer. Big shout out to Peter at De Bierwinkel, of course. Lovely beer shop in Leiden in the Netherlands, and I hope that some of you guys can check that out. You can go and check my out and about video that I did of it. So yeah, do go and check it out. But like I say, very cool to have my first Bulgarian craft beer for you here on the channel, and from what I gather, having researched this brewery a little bit, there does seem to be a fair number of little craft breweries popping up across the country actually, so fingers crossed I can get down there at some point and visit it. I've heard that Bulgaria is a very nice country. The closest I would have been is Greece, but my very good Greek friends that I have these days tell me the Bulgarians are very nice people. So yeah, somewhere that I do need to visit, and I've heard that Sofia in particular is a very nice city, so we'll see what we can do about that actually, about going down to visit Bulgaria. And if you are watching from Bulgaria, of course, please do let me know some of the other breweries that I should be checking out from your country, because this is the very first time I've come across anything from down there. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Beer Bastards. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Bulgarian beers that I've done, and this is going to be the very first one in that list, of course, but I will make the list and set it up for future reviews. Fingers crossed we can do more Bulgarian beers, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Beer Bastards then, on to my brewery notes. So Beer Bastards, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Burgas in Bulgaria on the southern part of the east coast. And the company was founded by Anton Panchev and Kalian Koev, who together own the Papa's Beers bar in the centre of Burgas. So Kalian apparently comes from a background as an electrical engineer, while Anton was a commercial director of a winery. But they both travelled across Europe and the world and tried various different beers, and they felt that the craft beer culture was something that really hadn't reached Bulgaria yet. But apparently they used to run wine tastings together, and then they also started to bring across some craft beers and let the people taste those as well, and it went down very well, and it started to grow very quickly. So at the end of 2016 they opened Papa Beers, which was first intended to be a beer shop with a small tasting room, but they decided early on that they actually wanted to brew their own beer as well, and so they created the Beer Bastards brand. So they began to search for a place that they could brew, and then they settled on Troost Brewery in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, which is probably the reason that I've got this beer. But the first beers that they released under the Beer Bastard brand were released in March of 2017. But they also began to brew at the Rhombus Brewery in Pazarzik, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Bulgaria. But they also started brewing some beers at Ulce, which is in Haarlem in the Netherlands as well. So these guys are basically a gypsy kind of contract brewery for the moment, but they are looking for sites to open up their own brewery, and as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they are brewed in various different locations from what I understand. So yeah, it's probably the reason that I've got a hold of this one when I was in the Netherlands was that they are gypsy brewing over there. Otherwise I've never come across any Bulgarian beers either up up here in Scandinavia or back home in Scotland. So yeah, as I say, this was the very first encounter I had with anything from Bulgaria in the craft beer world, so it was a pretty cool find actually. And like I say, I picked this one up at De Bierwinkel in Leiden in the Netherlands, quite close to Amsterdam, which is probably why we did get a hold of this one. Plus De Bierwinkel is a pretty awesome shop, I have to say. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Beer Bastards for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, although the brewery website doesn't have too much in the way of information. It is more kind of like a web shop, to be honest with you. But you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. That's probably your best bet. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, let's have a little taste of this beer then. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, pardon me, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty, it is pretty modern, I have to say. It is pretty modern, I do quite like it. But you can see there is that little symbol on the back there. It looks like a kind of, not sure exactly what it's meant to be. What does that say? Ubigin is fat. I'm not sure exactly what this thing is here, but I think it says like ubigin ekusvat. Ubigin ekusvat. I'm not sure exactly what that is supposed to mean actually. Maybe. Yeah, Bulgarian is. I did a Russian course at university, so I can read the Cyrillic to a fair degree. I've forgotten quite a bit of it now, but Bulgarian, of course, is quite a different language, but there's a lot of similarities from what I understand. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it's trying to say on the can there, but as I said to you earlier, this one is a 5.5% New England IPA. The hops in this are Amarillo, Azacca and Comet. There was another IPA there at the time, and I forget the name of it now, but it was the Amarillo and the Azacca that caught my eye on this, because I love orangey leaning IPAs. But you can see there is the Beer Bastards Brewing Company symbol on this one. But yeah, this one I think should be quite nice. Incidentally, the other thing I would say about this this brewery is that they do seem to focus on IPAs and like Berliner Weisses and stuff like this, top fermenting beers at the moment. So yeah, 5.5% IPA. Let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting then. I should say as well, I paid €5.75 for this one. I guess in Bulgaria they might be a little bit cheaper than that. Netherlands, of course, is one of the kind of, I guess, richer and more high-paying states in the European Union. So probably you will find the price of this beer will vary a little bit as you go across the continent. I'm not sure what countries these beers are actually available in, but I would guess some of them are in the, well, they are obviously available in the Netherlands and Bulgaria for the moment, and hopefully, as I say, we will see more Bulgarian breweries breaking their way out. We are starting to get more and more things from different countries across Europe these days, but the standard craft beer that we have is great, and it is nice to see Bulgaria kind of jumping on the bandwagon, if you like, and producing more and more craft beers. But yeah, as you can see with this one, this is poured kind of how you would expect for a New England IPA. You can see there's about somewhere between a third and a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head on this one. That's not a perfect white head, I would say, but it is a little bit bumpy around the edge, but it's quite foamy in the centre. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, and if I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see there is a good little bit of haze to this one. The level of haze on that for a 5.5%er is actually pretty impressive, and in terms of colour, I would describe this beer as being like a very kind of rich, mixed tropical fruit juice. I always use that as my point of reference for these New England IPAs. So yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one then, and just see how we get on. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. I can smell the oranges off it already. Oh yeah, that does smell pretty nice. So as we know, the hops in this, Amarillo, Azacca, Comet. Amarillo's that big oily orangey hop, one of the original high alpha acid ones from America. Azacca's got a lovely bright kind of mandarin-y note to it, but it can also give you some pineapple and stuff. And Comet is one that you don't see all that often, but it's quite passion fruity and mango-y from what I remember. Quite a lot of West Coast breweries in America quite like using it actually. But yeah, so the aroma that comes out of this one straight away, It's got a lovely smoothness to the malt base. It strikes me as being quite... The thing that surprises me about it a little bit is that the malt base strikes me as being quite crisp and quite bready in a lot of ways, but when you see the level of haze on this, the thing that really affects the level of haze would be the oats and the wheat. So you would expect one of those to be a little bit more prominent. And in fairness, when you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you do get some of the bitiness from the wheat. But I find it's quite crisp and quite white bready, and it's got a nice oaty. You do get a little bit of the oaty smoothness out of it as well. Yeah, and there is a bit of, I do find there's a bit of biscuity sweetness to this one, McVitie's digestive, kind of cookie type sweetness to it. I'm not sure what would be a good reference for Bulgarians. I would be guessing that they don't get McVitie's digestives over there. I think that is more of a kind of Western European thing than a kind of Southeast Europe type thing. But yeah, the aroma out of this on the malty side of things I think is very, very nice. Quite crisp, quite... nice little bit of a wheaty note to it. Yeah, the aroma that comes out of this, as I say, is very, very nice. So yeah, the aroma from this beer, I think, works very, very well on the malty side of it. It does have a little bit of biscuity note, like I say, a little bit of brown sugar in there, but then yeah, nice little bit of wheaty bitiness, some crisp white bready notes, and you've also got a good little bit of you also have a good little bit of, should we say, that big oaty creaminess as well, which is what you expect of the New England style. Hoppy side of things then. For me, the green side of the hops, it has a lot of floral aromaticity to it, and in fairness you would expect that from the hops that are in this. All of them are about 12% alpha acid. I think Azaka might be about 14 or something, a bit higher than the other two, but yeah, you do get a nice little bit of grassiness to it. The grassiness is a little bit of zest, and you've got some nice big kind of floral aromaticity to the beer as well. So I really like how that goes together. Floral side of the beer for me is pretty nice actually. Yeah. So yeah, fruity side of things. I think we've covered the green side of the beer pretty well. Yeah, quite floral and aromatic and a little bit grassy and zesty. Fruity side of things, you do get that nice big oily orange base from the Amarillo. That's kind of standing out for me with this one. You do get a nice little bit of a kind of soft mango-y type quality to the beer as well, which is going to be the Comet that's giving you that. It has got a little bit of that darker passion fruity edge to it, I think. But yeah, nice kind of juicy oily oranges. You get a wee bit of pineapple, you get a bit of that brighter tropical fruit out it as well, which is the Azaka, I think. So yeah, it's a really nice balance in the fruity side of this beer. You've got the big oily oranges and mandarins, and the mandarins of course coming from Azaka too. The more oily oranges are the Amarillo, but then the Comet gives you a bit of the passion fruit, a little bit of the mango, and you've also got that wee bit of pineapple from the Azaka too. So this one, just on the basis of the aroma, I think I made a solid choice when I picked this one. The other two beers they had, there was one IPA and there was a Berliner Weisse, but this one just caught my eye because of Amarillo. You don't find Amarillo too often in New England IPAs these days. Everyone uses Mosaic instead of Amarillo actually. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Trust Me You Can Dance, a 5.5% New England IPA from Beer Bastards in Burgas in Bulgaria. My very first Bulgarian beer. Do make sure you enjoy the aroma a little bit before you get stuck in. That's always half the experience with craft beer. But let's have a taste of this one then. Slanje, skål, and as the Bulgarians would say, na zdravje. Cheers. Yeah, that is pretty damn solid, I have to say. First impression of it is that it does have a degree of crispness to it, and you know, as you would expect from the more kind of southern European countries, you just would expect that a little bit because the climate obviously is pretty damn hot down there. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, it's a very, very nice tasting beer actually. It's really solidly done. It's got a nice kind of crisp drinkability to it, and that, you know, if you're right on the coast, on the Black Sea coast, then yeah, you would expect that. You would expect something like this. The mouthfeel just kind of makes sense for the region that this brewery is from, I guess you could say. Does it actually say on the can if this one's brewed in no, it doesn't say. It actually doesn't say which brewery this one is brewed at. It just has all their own branding and things like that. Like I said, these guys are a sort of gypsy contract brewery at the moment, but they will be brewing their own stuff at some point in the future. But it is really nicely done. Let's just try and break down this flavour for you a little bit then and describe it. So straight away with this beer, you can taste that nice kind of crisp sort of pale malty quality. That just blankets the middle of your palate, and you do get a nice kind of crisp white bready quality. That lingers there all the way into the aftertaste. You do get a bit of sweetness out of it as well. You can get an almost slightly sweeter bread crusty note developing out of this one the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, this is really pretty nice actually. I do like how this one, how it goes together. On top of that kind of crisp white bready base that I'm talking about, if you go towards the back third of your palate, you can feel the breadiness kind of thickens up a little bit and you get a bit of bitiness to it as well. That's the wheaty side of the beer. The wheat at the same time, it's not overly bitey, like, you know, some beers can be really bitey and almost kind of spicy in terms of their wheaty note, but this one, it's got a little bit of bitiness at the very back of the palate. Then as you move further forward, it's just that little touch kind of smoother. I would say you do get a nice little bit of a smoother wheaty quality out of this one. But yeah, as you move further forward into that middle third of your tongue, you can feel there's a little bit, there's a nice kind of oaty smoothness. Opens up and sits on top of that kind of crisp breadiness that the beer has. Then in the very centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy type thing, and I've noticed that's a trend in the Scandinavian New England IPAs. They do seem to be sweetening them up a little bit, and in fairness, that might explain the colour of this beer a little bit. This is one of the kind of darker and richer New England IPAs you're going to find in terms of colour, so there could well be a little touch of like caramel or caramunich, or, you know, something like this that just has an element of brown sugar to it. That might go some way to explaining the colour in this beer. The two ways, of course, to affect the colour in your beer is to, you know, the actual composition of the malt base, what malts you use, and then the length of the boil. But I suspect with this one, just the way this beer does get a little bit sweeter the more that you drink of it, I do suspect there might be something like caramunich or something like that in here. Because yeah, in the middle of your palate, like I say, you do get a little touch of that almost butter candy kind of thing going on. But I have seen beers, and I've said this in other reviews, and brewers have said, oh no, we actually don't use this, and they've said it's like carapils or something like that, or just a kind of pilsner malt. So I might be wrong on that. So yeah, and this beer does have an element of crispness to it, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is a wee touch of pilsner malt there, because if you go to that border between the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate, you just get that kind of crispness out of the beer as well. Pilsner malt is a pain in the ass to describe flavours of, because it's really more of a mouthfeel thing for me, but you just get a little bit of that pilsnery type crispness to, pardon me, this beer, just as you move further back on the palate actually. But this is solid. It's a really solid New England IPA, so it's cool to see that Bulgaria is doing these kind of beers as well now. But yeah, like I say, the more you drink of this one, the smoother it gets, the more oaty and creamy it gets. And it's just, it's really nice actually. It really develops a bit of a sweetness the further you go into the aftertaste. On the hoppy side of things, I think we've covered the malt base really as much as we need to. It's quite a straight shooting one, but it's just nicely crafted, and that's what you want. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate there is a wee bit of earthiness, and as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel it does develop a little bit more of a floral aromaticity. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there is a degree of zestiness to this beer as well. So yeah, I really like how that goes together with this one. You've got a really nice little bit of zestiness coming out of this beer. On the front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And it's nice how that goes together as well. I like these big orangey leaning beers, and this one really just kind of ticks that box for me. So if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get you do get a wee touch of that passion fruity note, but very quickly it evolves to be a slightly softer mango. For me, that is the comet kind of showing its head there. And then as you move onto the front half of that front third of your tongue, that's when you get the oily orange from the Amarillo. You can really feel that front third of your palate get really more oily as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, and then the big juicy kind of oily oranges there. As you move a little bit further forward from that, you'll start to get the slightly brighter mandarin-y note from the Azacca in this one, but then you can also feel the pineapple. I think the kind of pineapple notes that are also common for Azacca, you do start to get a little bit of that out of this one the further you go into the aftertaste. And I think the beer does actually start to lean towards the more tropical fruity side of things as you go further into the aftertaste as well. So this is a really interesting beer in terms of the transitions that it makes in the flavour. But yeah, I will say, this is a really nice, kind of solidly done New England IPA. So, very nice introduction to Bulgarian craft beer, I have to say. It ticks the boxes for me because of the orangey notes that it has. I really like that, personally. And remember, beer is subjective. Different people like different things. But, yeah, this beer definitely makes me curious about both beers from this brewery and some of the other ones that are going around in Bulgaria at the moment. I don't know what the traditional beer styles in Bulgaria would be. Would it just be a kind of Pilsner type beer that's come in from the Czech Republic? You know, I honestly don't know. I've never even seen any of the macro Bulgarian beers. This is the very first Bulgarian beer of any kind that I've tasted, and it's gone down pretty well, I have to say. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me. I certainly like how this one goes together. So in terms of the mouthfeel, I would say that this beer, I think it's mid-bodied. I think it's right in the middle of the spectrum. So yeah, mid-bodied beer. Carbonation does have a degree of crispness to it. At the same time though, the beer overall, I would say that it's quite smooth. It's got a nice wetness and a nice smoothness to it, I would say. A little bit of crispness, and you've got some really kind of you've got a good little bit of a kind of a little bit of sweetness in this beer. The malt base in this one for me, it's got a nice smooth bready base. There's a little bit of a kind of crispness to it as well, almost a little bit of a Pilsner Christmas, and the beer does develop a bit of sweetness the further you go into the aftertaste as well. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think we're only talking about 25 or 30 IBUs with this beer, which is pretty standard for the New England IPA style, but the fruitiness for me, really nice and juicy, but it does have a degree of oiliness from the oranges kind of sitting there underneath. But yeah, a solid beer, this one, and I'm glad that I was able to review this for you here on the channel, so I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on this one as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this. This one was the Trust Me, You Can Dance 5.5% New England IPA from Beer Bastards in Burgas in the southeast of Bulgaria, right on the coast. So yeah, awesome to review my first Bulgarian beer for you here on the channel. As I said, if you do happen to be watching from there, let me know some of the other breweries I should look at. If you do know a web shop that I can order some of the beers that delivers to the rest of the EU, that would be awesome as well, because then I can buy a few more Bulgarian things to review. But yeah, this was awesome to review, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on this one. This was a really random find. Like I said, I picked this up at Beerwinkel in Leiden in the Netherlands, but definitely cool to introduce another European country here on the channel as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that. The Trust Me, You Can Dance 5.5% New England IPA from Beer Bastards in Burgas, Bulgaria. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Beer Bastards, let me know some other Bulgarian beers, and I will catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, make sure you have a go at this beer.